Most Coloradans have never heard of the reformer who did more than anyone to improve juvenile justice and point out political corruption. Perhaps because he did expose so many problems, Denver has largely forgotten Judge Ben Lindsey. But Dr. Colorado remembers, and that's why we brought him on the show. Nice to see you.
Great to be here,
So
Denise.
tell me more about Judge Ben Lindsey and why we should remember him today.
He stood not even 5 feet tall, weighed under 100 pounds, and yet was a giant among Colorado reformers.
Wow. And is he most famous for reforming?
I think he saw kids go into jail with adults, where, of course, they're abused, and they learn to become big-time criminals there. And he said, we've got to set up a separate justice system for kids.
Oh, that's wonderful. So that's where the juvenile delinquency
Yeah,
came
and this
into
becomes the model for the nation and, to some extent, for the world.
And that's why he was so admired as the kids' judge, right?
Right.
Okay. And tell us about Lindsey's sensational expose of Colorado corruption. The book is called The Beast.
Right.
Dun, dun,
He took
dun.
the heroes we talk about, Evans, Moffett, Cheeseman, Spear, and pointed out that they were pretty corrupt and controlled by the corporations. A pretty convincing book called The Beast, which we've just reprinted at the University of Colorado.
Why is there a tiger sneaking up on that man?
That is the beast coming in to claw those innocent little kids.
Wow, that's kind of intense. And it took a lot of
yeah.
Did he just growl at me? And it took a lot of guts for him to write that expose and to show everything that they were doing
Right.
wrong.
He was persona non grata, you know, with Mayor Spear and all the power elite whose names he blackened.
There was a lot of time that he spent in the old courthouse, and I understand, or I don't know if this is true or not, but was it struck by lightning?
Right. You can't barely see the tippy top of that dome there, but it was a Statue of Liberty like that, with scales, and she'd been hit so many times she was worn down to a nubbin in her elbow. And Lindsey points this out and says that was the punishment for the misadministration of justice that went on in that courthouse.
Boy, he was an interesting man, a brave man,
That's
too.
the Hyatt Hotel today is on that site at 16th and Court Streets.
What was his name for Cheeseman's Park?
He called it Corporation Park. Walter Scott Cheeseman had a monopoly on water service and kept raising the rates, and you turn on your water and a minnow would come out or no water would come out. And he said he was cheating the people, and this should be called Corporation Park, Corporation Pavilion, not Cheeseman Pavilion.
So he called out a lot of people. He had a lot of enemies, I would imagine.
Right.
They chased him out of town, so then that kind of advanced his reform ideas, right?
Right, he goes to L.A., and they put him on the court there and have him set up a juvenile court system there. And there he gets into movies to espouse a lot of radical ideas. Here's the grand opening in Denver of the story of Judge Ben Lindsey.
How interesting. What an interesting man. You can find out more about this interesting man that we always have on the show, Dr. Colorado, by going to his website. It's dr-colorado.com. That's dr-colorado.com. He has a lot of tours, including the Open Doors, Doors Open Denver. It's happening this
There's
weekend,
some
right?
great tours, and Dennis Gallagher is going to be doing a great one. You remember Dennis from being on.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Of Globeville, and the Slavic churches there, and the Russian Orthodox churches in that little-known neighborhood in North Denver.
He's a former Irishman, or he is an Irishman.
He is, number one Irishman, yep.
That's great. Why do you think people should get involved with, check out Doors Open Denver?
Doors Open Denver is a wonderful program. You get into a lot of buildings normally they charge you to get into, or they're law offices or something or other that's not normally open to the public. They always come up with fascinating new churches or office buildings.
Interesting.
And some of the newest and most interesting newer architecture.
Plus, we get to meet you, too, and that's always fun. So before we go, is there a fun Judge Lindsey story that you want to share, something that most people don't talk about, or something that just amazed you when you were doing research about
I
him?
think he would actually find these little kids. They'd be brought in 11, 12, 13 for stealing coal. He'd go home with them and find out they lived in poverty. They were all freezing at home, and the parents set them out, can see if you can find a chunk of coal somewhere or other. He'd go down to the railroads, pick up some coal and take it, and they'd bust him for stealing coal to take home, throw him in jail with adults,
That's heartbreaking.
which would often lead to a life of crime.
So thank God he changed that. Thanks you. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's always nice to see you. Again, Dr. Colorado hopes that you will join him, of course, on the upcoming tours, including Watering Holes of Lodo on Sunday. That one's going to be a lot of fun. That's Sunday, May 3rd. If you'd like to call and register, it's 303-866-2394. That's 303-866-2394 to register. Details for this and his many other talks, tours, and classes can also be found at dr-colorado.com.